Okay, everyone. Hi, everybody. Thank you all for joining tonight for our match panelists. If our panelists could actually turn on their cameras and kind of introduce themselves. My name is Mariel. I'm currently the vice president of Surgery Interest Group, and we're really excited to kind of have this Q&A tonight. So I'm gonna kind of leave the floor open for our panelists to introduce themselves and kind of tell us where they matched and what's been going on.
I guess I'll go first. I don't know if anybody else is here. I'm Gurge. I just graduated in December. I matched at UNC. And I'm from Toronto, so any Canadians, if you guys need any help, I guess I'm here to help you out if you have any questions.
And I believe Jimmy is on as well, if he can introduce himself.
Hi everyone. You guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. My name is Jimmy. Currently still a fourth year, graduating in May, but I matched at Rutgers.
That's so exciting. So we actually have a couple questions that people did type in a Google Doc for us. So y'all can answer freely, and then we'll kind of leave it open to everybody on if they have questions at the end as well. So the first question that we got was, what is one piece of advice you would give someone applying this upcoming cycle?
I would say, I don't know, like it's not just like one thing, unfortunately. Like I feel like you have to have a little bit of everything. So like make sure that your personal statement really does showcase who you are. I'll be completely honest, the first 5 drafts that I had were completely garbage, but like the more you look at it, the more you type it out, the more you do all like you edit it, make sure you get a lot of eyes on it. And make sure that your application, one thing that I was told, and I didn't realize it until interviews actually, your application itself is literally there to be like talking points. So the extracurriculars that you do, whether it's volunteering, whether it's, I don't know, doing a sport outside of like outside of school or whatever, like make sure you put your personality into the application is what I would say. And do things like thrifting. If you thrift, put it on there. If you like go to a cycle bar and you like have built a community out of that, like go put that on there. It'll just be talking points for your interview, sorry. That would be my advice.
Yeah, just to echo what Gersh said, I think your personal statement is the first thing that they read, and that's what they'll talk about a lot during your interviews. Also, your application, um, bringing out a personality in you. I had one of my mentors who told me that at a particular site I was interested in, they interviewed someone who literally put they were an ice cream scooper on their application, and that got them an interview, and that's all they talked about during the entire interview. Another thing that I think would stand out is a good personal statement. Personally, for me, that was what a lot of my interviewers were talking about. They couldn't stop raving about the personal statements that I received. And I think having like a well-rounded personal statement, having a good letter of recommendation is also important. Your letter of recommendations is pretty much the personal statement gets them to know who you really are, and then your letter of recs is like, okay, let's give this person a chance. Let's see what this person is really about. Having really strong LORs is also important as well.
I believe our third panelist just joined. So hi, if you could introduce yourself as well.
Hi, yeah, so I missed the question. So I would like to know what the question is, and then maybe I can chime in.
Absolutely. Well, first, if you could tell us where you matched, and then the question was, what was one piece of advice you would give someone applying this cycle?
So I matched into a categorical spot at HCA Houston and Kingwood. It was my number one choice because that is home for me. And so I can second the personal statement. I feel like my personal statement was a big piece, but I also think starting early was a big piece for me. I started going to conferences and networking with people in third year, not in fourth year. So by the time I got to fourth year, majority of the people already knew what I wanted, and they just wanted to confirm that that's what I was still interested in. And I was also able to build a relationship that was longer than 2 months. So I felt like it really helped me. I had multiple people that were willing to make a call on my behalf if need be. And so I think just starting early, whether it's your personal statement, networking, because even my personal statement, I want to say I started that probably like 4 months before the application even opened. And so I think by the time that the application opened, I had a good final personal statement that I was able to send out to letter writers. Um, and so again, I think just starting early would be my piece of advice.
And that's honestly all great advice. And I know a lot of us have to start thinking about our personal statements, and the cycle is about to be opening in about 2 months. So that was actually really, really helpful. Our next question that we had was, how did you go about researching the programs you applied to?
I was a little bit disadvantaged in a sense of like I need a visa. So for me personally, I had to look at programs that were visa friendly or like gave J1 visas, which is a majority of programs to be quite honest. But then you had to go and look and see, hey, did this person have like a Canadian student, or like you can tell because I literally went onto the sites of the places that I wanted to go to, and I saw their pages and I did a little LinkedIn search on where the residents had gone. It took me, like Noisha said, I started doing my research as soon as the applications opened in June, if not even earlier. I knew from my mentors that certain hotspots were more friendly to Canadians. So like I did that kind of research based off of that early. But I used Frida, I used Residency Explorer, and I used um just like on the actual residency website and like looking at every single resident underneath the pages.
So same, but I went a step further. So I started off with like Freedom Residency Explorer to get like a basic list. And again, I started kind of early. So I kind of had a list by the time it opened. But I started with the basic list, and then I went to each of those program websites and I did the same thing to see what their residents were made up of. Like if they ever had a Caribbean medical student, not just Rossi's, but SGU and even some of the other Caribbean schools. I also reached out to all the Rossi's that matched surgery previously, to see where they matched that surgery and just to reach out to them to make that connection. And then also I found, maybe if they had like, if I knew a Rossi that was an emergency medicine resident, I would reach out to them and say, hey, do you know any surgery residents? So because I think that like you get the best about a program directly from somebody in the program. Like there's a lot of things that you won't be able to see on the website or their Instagram page, because they make everything look cute and fun. So for me, I really just wanted as much insight as I can get from people who were, either actually at the hospital or, actually in the area. So places that I was really interested in, I tried to find a contact.
Yeah, for me, mine was a little bit backwards. I kind of did mine last minute, um, mainly because I literally took step after the cycle opened. But previously, I'd reached out to a couple of Rossies who matched at different programs, and I asked them for their list. So I was pretty much going to bank on their list and use that to apply to programs. Um, but after I took step, I eventually looked at their list and then used Residency Explorer, Frida, because a lot of the programs on that list was outdated. So I had to do that update and everything right before um, ERAS opened. So I literally turned mine in pretty much late, but um, I would say don't do what I did. Start early and reach out to a lot of people who have lists that are already existing, and then you can always update those lists using Frida and Residency Explorer. Also, the information on Frida is usually more up to date than what is on Residency Explorer, just from my personal experience. Resident Explorer will give you like the PD emails that are non-existent or PDs who are no longer associated with the program, but Frida is usually up to date. And Frida would tell you at the bottom when the information was last updated as well. So that's something you can use to piggyback off of your list.
I just want to add to that. I kept a spreadsheet. And for me, location was important. So I listed I listed my residencies out based on like state. Because like I have two children, so I really wanted to get as close back to home as possible. But I've been on the East Coast for the past 2 years, so a lot of my connections are here on the East Coast. So keeping a spreadsheet is good, and then also kind of having an idea of something that you may want. Like for example, I'm interested in trauma, so places that were like level 3 trauma centers or didn't have a trauma center, they were very low on my list. But again, it just kind of helped me sort through the list and kind of helped me in my research. And then I also looked at like what fellowships they had too. Like if you know you're interested in fellowship, just take a look at that. So just some things to think about when you're doing your research.
Also, there's another website. I'm gonna try and look for it right now, actually, that I saw. They posted like newly accredited programs as well. By end of September, they posted, I think, 4 new hospitals that were starting up a brand new residency. So I also applied to those afterwards as well, just to make sure that we covered all our bases. So I'm gonna try and see what website that was again, but I'll post it in the chat.
Oh yeah, another thing I just remembered too is Reddit sometimes would have good subreddits and good links that are already existing, where they just like throw a bunch of the programs right off the bat. And then sometimes if you just Google, you can see like a lot of the programs that are IMG friendly, and it gives you like a good spreadsheet of what IMG schools matched into those programs as well.
Yeah, if y'all could drop those links, that would be fantastic. So our next question is about the kind of like the application. So did you use like outside resources like MatchPal to get your application reviewed professionally?
So I didn't. I had a mentor. So I did my course at Sinai and I did a bunch of uh what's it called? Electives there too. So I knew the residents quite well. One of the residents had a mentor slash person that reviewed her application. And I was like, you know what? I'd be down to have somebody help me out. So they reviewed my personal statement and my application. Realistically, if you have a mentor, if you have friends that were in like that had just matched or whatever like that, I would get them to read it. I would get them to go over it. I don't think you need to spend money to go over your application unless you have the means. I thankfully did. I was very, very lucky and fortunate, but I don't think it's necessary to have a professional look over it. Maybe your personal statement. I was very happy that I had somebody look over my personal statement multiple times. Um, that would be my 2 cents. I think if you want to pay for somebody, a personal statement would be better to pay for someone to look over your personal statement. But your application, it's very straightforward. You have a word limit, you have certain things to drop down menu and everything like that. I don't think you personally need it for the application part.
Yeah, just to echo off what she said, I completely agree. I was looking into a couple people who did one of those programs that would help you go over your personal statement and all of that. But by the time you factor in all the cost and the cost of applying as an IMG very broadly to a lot of programs, it adds up and it gets super duper expensive. Thankfully, most interviews these days are online, but imagine if you have to like also fly to these places and accommodation, it really does add up. So what I did was I utilized what was available to me on the resources. I utilized family, friends, and mentors as well. So I started off by sending it to my family members who were not in the medical field and friends who are not in the medical field because I wanted to get that expert opinion from someone outside, especially for the personal statement, get a different set of eyes on someone who has nothing to do with medicine, and then send it to people who are actually in medicine who would then refine it and then put it together to read into a very, very well, nicely put story that tells you that, hey, I want to be a general surgeon, I want to be a future surgeon. And then finally, I sent it to my uncle, who is MD, PhD, super expert at writing papers. And then he's like, hey, switch this word in now, put this word in here, stuff like that. And then the last piece of editing was to my mentor, who was also going to write my personal statement. And that last feedback, they were like, it was perfect. They wouldn't change it in. I was like, okay, it's good to go. It's good to submit the way it is. And then I sent out my personal statements to my other mentors who are going to write my letters of recommendations. And as far as the application went, I also used like my friends and families to like just get set of eyes on it, and get different perspectives. Again, it's all about how you put it together, because you want to really paint a picture that tells more about you than just your academics and more than your grades. You want to show that you're actually a human being and you're a person, someone that they can work with, because that's who they're looking for at the end of the day. They're not looking for a star student who is going to be stuck up. They're looking for a star student or a middle star student who they can relate with. So
Yeah, and same for me. I didn't necessarily pay anybody. I do have a creative writer that I work with for like different articles and stuff like that. And for me, I like to just be straight to the facts, but I really wanted to tell a story. So in my initial draft, I had her kind of turn my life into like a story, like a creative story. Because that's just like that's what I wanted. That's the way I see myself, in my like previous career. So that's what I wanted to convey. So once she did that and I came to my final draft, I did show it to, I had one mentor that I worked through my entire application with. I mean, from start to finish. We met and said, hey, here's my list of programs, here are my hobbies, we just kind of did it in sections. But once I got a final draft of my personal statement, I sent it to my letter writers. I got like little tiny small feedback from them. So I just combined it, I made tiny little edits. And that was pretty much it. I did not have a ton of people read it, a ton of friends and things like that. Just people who had done what I was trying to do. In different locations, that know, different things about me, just to get a mixed point of view. But I can go with them. I don't think that you need to pay anybody. I did have a friend that paid somebody because they felt overwhelmed. So they were trying to take step at the same time. They hadn't got their letter writers. They were trying to finish rotations. And so they just felt really overwhelmed. And so in that case, it may be helpful just to kind of deal with the stress, or if you're somebody who doesn't handle, being overwhelmed easily. But I honestly think if you start early and find trusted mentors, you won't need to pay anybody.
That's all super, super helpful. So our next question is to focus more on like the interviews. So what question or questions should students prepare and answer for besides something like tell me about yourself?
So besides tell me about yourself, strengths and weaknesses, that's a common question. And they may not ask it just like that. They would say like, if you ever needed, if you ever got negative feedback, what would it be for? Or something like that. They would just kind of turn it into a situational thing. Also be able to answer anything about anything on your application. Like he said, being an ice cream scooper, be able to say, when did you do that? Why did you do that? What type of interactions that you had that are most memorable. So just remember your past. Anything that you include in your application, you should be able to answer stuff about it. Like I've told my story so many times that I feel like I didn't really have to prepare in that sense, but I've definitely had people ask me stuff and I was like, whoa, like I forgot that was even like a part of my my personal statement. So I think strengths and weaknesses to tell me about yourself. Oh, why do you want to do surgery? Of course, like that's top of the list and make it good. I think for me that might be like the top ones.
For me, it was how did you deal with a interpersonal relationship that did not go your way and how you dealt with it? That was that was a very common question. And the other one that I got in every single one of my interviews was, tell me something that's not on your application. And that was it. Or summarize who you are outside your application. And then they would just sit back and be like, okay, so tell me. That was the most asked question. Like I got asked that in every single one of my questions. I mean, sorry, in every one of my interviews. So that and why general surgery, always. And then they will always ask you, do you want a fellowship? Do you know exactly what you want to do? And then the application part, like Noisha said, know it inside and out, because they will, if there's something that you say that doesn't match up to your application, they will grill you. They'll be like, oh, okay, and why, and why? And then you just start rambling and it gets not so fun. So definitely know your application very well.
Yeah, for me, thankfully, I didn't get asked any question in my application. It was just mainly feedbacks about, oh, your application is pretty good. It's tailored to be a general surgery. But I did get asked a lot, what are your plans after, or like, what's your 5-year plan? Are you considering a fellowship? And then there's a lot of weird questions that they ask in a lot of weird ways. It's basic questions, but the way they phrase it can throw you off guard. So just kind of prepare yourself not to be too fixated on one particular response, but to be flexible in the moment to give a good response. Another question I got asked was, tell me about yourself. I told the program director about myself, and they were like, have you ever had a job outside of medicine? And I considered like, okay, tutoring, something like that as outside of medicine. They were like, no, it's still related to, healthcare field or something like that. And she asked directly, have you ever worked at like McDonald's or something? And I was like, no. So again, they want to know, are you a relatable person? Are you someone who is like outside of like, who you have a life outside of medicine, or you have something that doesn't tie directly to medicine? And I got a lot of questions about what is something that would stand out about yourself outside of your application. And I told them, I was learning at the time how to play the saxophone, and I think that skyrocketed the interview at the program. I completely matched that because we just completely went off. Went off script. We weren't even chatting anymore. And she was like, "Oh yeah, she's also learning how to play the piano." And then we just started talking and then bouncing off recommendations and stuff like that. So always put your interest out there. Don't be scared that, oh, because you're into gardening, or because you're into something that you don't feel like it can be relatable, that they won't be able to relate back to. You never know how the person's life is all about and stuff like that. I also told them I like traveling, and we're also talking about like places she's visited and stuff like that. So it's also important. And then also I mentioned being a big foodie, liking Thai food, Korean barbecue, all of that stuff. And we're just talking about like food spots in Jersey and all of that. So again, just be 100% yourself during these interviews. It's okay to not always have the perfect answer, but as long as you can sit down, be relaxed, speak eloquently, and give a well thought out answer, I think that goes a long way, because it shows that you're very well prepared for the interview at the end of the day. Because they can easily spot when you've rehearsed something multiple times, and that's not what they want. They want you to be genuine, in my opinion.
And I just have like 2 other questions to add. So I got a lot about like a patient encounter. So like a memorable patient encounter, a difficult patient encounter, a time where you had to fix something, or, just something about a patient encounter. So just try and think about a couple of patient encounters you may have had, and that maybe one encounter can answer any of those questions. Another one that I got a couple times was, what would you do if you couldn't do surgery? And people tend to just go to like another surgical thing or another medical thing. My answer was honestly, I would be a hairstylist. That's something that I've done before. I enjoy helping people. I enjoy that people feel good when they're done. So as long as you have a good reason for why you want to do that, it does not have to be like, it needs to be fun. Like that's part of showing your personality. You also don't have to say anything wild, like, oh, I would be like a clown or something, let it be something that, if you can do anything in the world, that's what you would do and why you would do it.
Also, one thing that I did realize as well during interviews is that it was more of a conversation. It was like, oh, so tell me more about this. I felt like a lot of the times I would walk out of the interview and I'm like, I feel like I didn't get asked that many questions really, because all they did was just kind of probe at your application or probe little things, and then you would organically kind of have a conversation. It's just a lot of talking, and they want to see, like Jimmy said, they want to see that you're a human. They want to see that you're relatable, you're personable, that you're not exactly the worst person to work with, to be quite honest. And you can tell very easily just by talking to somebody. Um, and make sure that you're humble. Let's be so for real. Make sure that your answers are a little bit humble. It's like it's good to be confident, but make sure they're a little humble. But a lot of the times it was just a conversation. It was like, oh, so like how's interview season going? How are your rotations going? It would just start off with the ball rolling like that, and then it would go into, okay, so tell me more about yourself. Then it'd be like, oh, cool. So you told me that you, like Jimmy, you play the saxophone. How did you get into that? Why did you get into that? And it's like, it really is just a conversation. And the more organic it is, the more that you can feel it out, and you also feel less stressed. I was super stressed going into it, then realizing if it's just a conversation, we can just talk. And as long as you can just talk and have a good answer and be able to, like Jimmy said, if you're able to come up with an answer, it doesn't have to be right. And you're allowed to say, hey, I'm nervous, by the way, like it's fine. You're human. As long as you are able to show that, you'll be fine.
Yeah, a couple more things that I also just remembered. There are weird questions like if you could go back to any point in time, what time would it be and why? And got asked another question. If you had I don't remember the exact dimensions now, but they gave me like this hypothetical dimensions of a particular room, and they gave me pencils. They're like, how many pencils would you fit in like a specific dimension of a room? And I was completely thrown aback. I was like, I don't know. So I just gave like a random answer. I was like, I'll fit as many pencils as I can in the room. And they were like, I kind of like your answer because it's different from what every other person has given. A lot of people do the math and try to calculate it. And from there, they're like, I can tell you probably want to do trauma surgery. I mean, to be honest, I'm not interested in trauma surgery. But I was just like, I'm going to flow with this. If that's what you guys are feeling, I'll flow with it, you know? Um, and it's just like a lot of conversations, especially when you're interacting with the residents. First of all, they'll come into the interview telling you, "Hey, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I'm just going to ask you a couple questions," and they're just pretty much more laid back and chill, and they just let you like talk. But one thing I do want to emphasize is when they ask you questions about like challenging times you've been in, or um, or like an instance where you had to correct someone, or you were put in a bad spot or something like that. Try not to badmouth anyone because they're waiting for you to fall into that trap. And also to mention names as well. You always want to reflect back on it and look at it into a positive way rather than putting the other person down in that sense.
This is all super helpful. I wanted to say that interview is probably one of the biggest things I'm nervous about, and I'm sure a lot of people on this panel as well, like on the Microsoft Teams as well. So I'm actually going to open it up to the floor for kind of like a Q&A session. If you want to come off mute, if you want to type in the chat. I see Muhammad actually has a question that he would like to ask, so we could kind of start with him.
Thank you. Hey guys, first off, I want to say congratulations to all of you. Awesome accomplishment, and thank you guys for doing this. We appreciate it. My question regarding the interviews, I know virtual interviews are way more popular these days. I don't know if all of you guys did virtual interviews, but if you did, were there any challenges that you faced because of the virtual interview? Because I feel like for me at least, it's easier to make an impression on someone when you're in person, like body language and, the way you walk into a room or all that kind of stuff. So if your interview was virtual, were there any challenges that you faced? And I don't mean like technical difficulties, but like, I don't know, did you find anything challenging or hard to navigate because you were talking, through a computer rather than sitting in front of someone?
For me, I think initially I was concerned about whether or not I would connect with people. If people would be able to get a gist of my personality just by me, being on a screen. But once, I got to talking, that all went away, honestly. this whole being virtual is not new to us. Like we've done it with Ross, you know, ever since COVID, like everything has been virtual. And so just like we're talking now is the same way. But I think, you know, just something to be mindful of is just your facial expressions, your posture. I think those two things, like I smiled a lot, you know, but that's because I was genuinely happy to like be in the meeting, and I also smile when I'm nervous, so it kind of worked in my favor. Um, but yeah, so I think if you just relax, like I started off my virtual interviews being fully dressed from head to toe. I mean, in my heels, wearing perfume, everything, because I just wanted to get in the mindset. Like when you're dressed a certain way, you carry yourself a certain way. And so to make sure I was giving off the right, you know, vibe, I wanted to be fully dressed. Well, you know, as I got down to like interview number 10, my bottoms was like Batman pajamas. You know, eventually I got to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, you know, I can do this. You know, I can just flow with something off the tongue, and, you know, it became more of a natural thing. So I think some level of nervousness is normal, but I don't really feel that I ran into any problems. I set up my background beforehand. I turned on my camera and I said, does this look presentable if I was sitting on the other side of the screen? You know, I even FaceTime my mom and I'm like, you know, what do you think? You know, how do I look? How am I coming across? How is the light? You know, you don't want to do that on the first day, you know, or your first interview, find out exactly what you look like from somebody else's end. Um, so yeah, that's just kind of something to think about. So I think a certain level of being nervous is okay, but I don't really recall having a lot of issues. I don't know about you guys.
I didn't either. I had the same experience you did where like I dressed head to toe as well. I put my heels on, I did my full beat, I did everything. Like I went to the nines, but like if you feel good, you feel presentable, like as if you were about to go in person, you're going to be fine on camera. Do you know what I mean? Like it it is a little weird at the beginning, but then when you start conversating and you're starting to talk, it's natural. Like I'm talking with my hands right now. It's natural to talk with your hands. Obviously, don't wave them up in the air, but you know, yeah, like hey. But like if you talk with your hands, be natural. Like I was told that if you talk on a camera the same way that you talk in person, like as if you were going to be in front of a person, you're going to be fine. There was no technical difficulties. There was nothing like that. I will say as soon as they start asking you questions, it's kind of you kind of hone in immediately, and like everything that you had in the back of your brain being like, oh my God, like, is my tie okay? Is like this okay? Like anything that it's out of your mind. I promise you.
One other thing. So I did have like one interview that started really early, so I had to be there for like the orientation. But then I had a solid 2 hour gap before I actually started interviewing because that they were interviewing so many people. And first of all, I couldn't believe it because I had my coffee, you know, I was all like energized and ready to go, makeup all done. One tip I will say, you know, just stay close by. Like don't leave and go to the store, you know, like for example, the program that I'm actually at now, you know, we would have breaks in between, and I spent a lot of time talking to the coordinator, and I feel like that made a difference. You know, you're going to work with the coordinator a lot, so they have to have a good impression of you as well. So it's those little in between conversations that's not necessarily an interview that you may, you know, you don't want to miss, or maybe they're done with somebody earlier and they're ready for you, and you know, if you're at 7-Eleven, you're going to miss your spot, like, and make a terrible impression. So even if it's a 2 hour wait, just make sure you stay by, you know, stay ready to get back in front of the camera. I mean, of course, I turned my camera off, but like if I heard, you know, maybe some of the residents talking or some of the other interviewees talking, I would, you know, get back on the camera and join the conversation as well. So that was just like a random tip, but yeah, just stay close by and stay ready.
And after the interview, at least for me, either after the interview or at the beginning of the interview, they tell you, oh, by the way, we're having second looks. So definitely go to those if those are programs that you were interested in. And that's where you get to really have that face-to-face conversation. I went to two of them. And it's nice. You get to really show like you as a person, but then at the same time, it also shows your interest. So keep that in mind too, that a lot of programs will offer second looks. So even if it is virtual, you'll be able to have that like interpersonal, real life kind of connection as well.
Yeah, for me, I pretty much had similar experience. Most of the interviews were on Thalamus anyways, and Thalamus is pretty great. Only thing is, if you use a Mac, make sure you check your settings and you've approved video and audio, because you don't want to be fiddling the day of the interview trying to figure out how Thalamus works. But the only technicality that I had was more like a schedule conflict, and thank God everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. There were two programs I was super interested in. One of them, the program I matched into, and the other one, another program I was very interested in. And the only spot that was available was the same day that I already booked for a different program. And I was like, crap, I really, really love both programs. What do I do? I reached out to a couple of my mentors, friends, family, and they were like, hey, just book both interviews the same day. It will work itself out. I booked both interviews the same day. I had both interviews the same exact time. And I literally had two laptops. Put one here, muted myself and stopped my video on one while I was interviewing at the other one, and then jumped right back into the other one. And I'm just happy it all worked out. But that's a living testimony, honestly. I don't know anyone who's had two interviews at the same time at two top
Don't plan on it.
academic programs. So crazy, but I did it.
Is one of the one that you got into?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Happy for you.
So imagine if I didn't take it.
Where did you match, by the way? I'm sorry.
Rogers.
Okay. New Brunswick or Robert Woods,
The one in Newark.
Newark. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much.
The
Okay,
APD there is Rossi.
cool. I see we have a question in the chat. So it says, were there any clinical rotation sites that you felt were the best in regard to surgery clinicals and helping you match into the specialty? And then a question, I guess, for Gurj as well. Were you happy with your Mount Sinai rotation experience, and can you tell us anything about that? If anyone else also was at Mount Sinai.
So I did, let me see, I did 1, 2, 3, I did 4 surgical rotations. 2 of them were at Sinai. One was at St. Agnes, and then I went to Dignity in LA. Loved the Dignity LA surgery. Dr. Kim, whoever wants to do surgery, you have to do it with Dr. Kim in LA. That man is God. I freaking love him to death. That actual rotation kind of made me think, oh, maybe plastics, but also like he makes it fun. He makes you learn. He makes you see, like it's just unreal. So anybody that wants to do surgery, I think that's a great rotation to do. He's written multiple letters. I thankfully didn't need it. It was in August of last year. I already had my 5 letters. I didn't need it. So I was like, I didn't really care. So I didn't, but I know the person before me and 2 before me as well. They've all asked him, he wrote a glowing recommendation. The one at St. Agnes, do it if you want to. I didn't have a great time, but that's just me personally. I think if you go into a rotation, you can just make it whatever you want to make out of it. I personally was driving like an hour and a half. I screwed myself over, to be quite honest. I was living in DC. I was driving an hour and a half every day. So I screwed myself over. But Sinai, loved it. I loved it specifically because I did my course there. I knew the residents, I knew how the system worked, and that's why I was able to do better, if that makes sense. I knew what was expected. I knew what was necessary out of a 4th year. I knew what was like how things kind of ran. So it was easier for me. That's why I also wanted to step out and like challenge myself elsewhere, which I do recommend you do as well, because you will not be matching at the program that you are going to be rotating at. Let's be for real. You will be going into a different environment and into a different space. And I think it is necessary to challenge yourself that way. But Sinai was great. Residents expect you to be an integral part of the team when you are at Sinai. You are working as an intern minus the orders. So as long as you were able to do that, I had a great time. I did trauma and bariatric there, and then I did my surgical sub-I at St. Agnes, and then plastics in LA.
Yeah, I also did my third year at Sinai and a couple, well, pretty much my majority of my fourth year at Sinai as well. I did SICU and CT surgery at Sinai. Absolutely loved it. Um, and I think Sinai's program is actually pretty good compared to like a couple other places. I know I was like laughing when Gert was talking, but that's because I resonate with her about the St. Agnes program. No offense to anyone who likes it. I'm not trying to discourage you, just personal experience. I hated it and it was miserable. They actually make you feel miserable and they try to put the residents on a pedestal no matter how humble you are. Like my personal experience, I had the residents telling me the opposite of what to do. Like I've been closing port sites at Sinai since third year. The resident told me I didn't know what I was doing and told me I was doing rubbish and told me to do something entirely different. The PD at St. Agnes told me to close Portside. I did what the resident told me and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "This is what your resident told me." But obviously I couldn't say your resident told me to do this because that already makes me look bad and makes the resident look bad. So personal
It's the
experience,
lack of
I hated it.
communication.
At,
Yeah, I think it's just lack of communication at that program specifically.
yeah,
And they will go out of their way to not help you. So if
exactly.
you want a good experience at a toxic program, go ahead, have a great time. That's all I will say.
Yeah, totally horrible program in my opinion. But Dignity with Dr. Kim, fantastic. He's phenomenal. I recommended another friend to do it, and they just kept on, pouring out good reviews about him. If you're interested in surgery or plastic surgery, Dr. Kim is who to go to. First of all, his office is pretty chill. Everyone there is super nice, lovely. They take care of you, and he gives you free lunch too. So, only downside is it's LA, so you always have to like Uber or catch the bus if you don't have a car.
Yeah, I also did St. Agnes. I won't say it was as bad as everybody else's experience. It wasn't that terrible. But I will say I don't I feel like you get out what you put in and you have to make your own way there. Like nobody is just helping you. Like nobody is like, I'll get out the way and let you be a leader. You have to like demand that spot. Like when I went, I was the only surgical sub-I there, so I didn't have a lot of other ones. Um, and I think like once I took control of my like team, I didn't have any issues. Like, I mean, they talked to me. I didn't do too much. I just when it was my time to do anything, I shined whenever it was my time. I didn't try to like outshine the residents or, I didn't like follow them around the hospital. If I had a question, I asked them and then I went took care of my own patients, and I just kind of checked in with them throughout the day. So but I will say that they do seem miserable. Nobody seems happy. It almost seems forbidden to smile there. Like you won't ever see a resident smiling there. Like you won't, and you'll hardly see some of the attendings smiling. So I think that's like, especially because I did about 4 surgery rotations too, outside of my main hospital. And so once you go to other places, it's like you can be happy and do surgery. Like there's no happiness there. But I will say I did go to a toxic program that was also in Baltimore. It was a non-affiliate Sinai. I won't go into detail there, but that was and anybody who has reached out to me prior, I have told them like I don't want to make my experience your experience, but it was so bad that I didn't even apply there. Like I went out of my way to apply there because I think you have to have at least a 3.5 GPA before they even allow you to apply for a rotation.
Yeah.
And they, it's a level 1 trauma center. And I was the only student. So, I thought it would be a great one, but it was terrible. The 24-hour shifts, I was working about 28 hours. Even though like sometimes they really weren't including me, like they would not tell me what's going on. Like, when they would get calls, consults, I would have to keep saying like, is there anything I can do? Like, can I go to some of the consults?
Which is
They're
so
more
annoying sometimes,
yes,
right?
because I don't
Like
want to be here
that's the
either.
part.
Like I can be at home sleep. Like,
So
why am
what
I
I
here?
did was if you do it at Sinai, I'm sorry, at St. Agnes, what I did was I stayed in the ED. I made friends with the ED attendings, and before they paged it to the resident, I was there. So same as you, Noisha, like nobody told me what I was supposed to do. Nobody told me what, where, who, what, where, when, why. They told me to go get a cautery from the ED. The ED's looking at me like, why the hell do you need a portable cautery? She's like, oh, I have a nosebleed. She's about to cut. Anyways, I'm not going to go into it, but I will say on a happy note, Dr. Caudry, that man is, I love him. I
Yeah.
like Noisha said, you make the time, like you make the experience out of it, like however way you want to. I said, I'll do my responsibilities that I need to on whatever team I was on. I think I was on blue team. And I said, you know what? You don't want me to present, you don't want me to do this, like fine. I will just go to Dr. Caudry's clinic. I will do what I want to do then. I will take out of this experience what I want. So I was the only student that ever went to his clinic, had a great time, went to all of his surgeries. I made it a purpose to go to all of his surgeries. Like I built my surgical sub-I however way I wanted to, and then I just did my responsibilities as I needed to there. And I think you should do that wherever you go. Take whatever you want out of wherever you are at, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I completely agree. At the end of the day, these are like our experiences. This is my experience. It's not going to make your experience any better or any worse. At the end of the day, it's up to you to make it what you want it to be. Um, but just personally, especially like because I'm interested in trauma, even though I do not want to be a trauma surgeon, it was like one of my criteria when I was ranking my programs. If you're a level one trauma center, you're automatically top of my list. Um, and they're not even level one or level two. And I remember one time they had a trauma case, and already having that ingrown experience here at Sinai, they drill it into you what to do in a trauma situation. These guys looked clueless. And I was like, you guys are fourth and fifth year residents, and you don't know what to do in a trauma setting. I'm not saying I know what to do, but at least I've seen that exposure here at Sinai. So it was just something that I was like, for me as a future physician, I want to be well equipped in any situation I put myself in. And so I really wanted a level one trauma center to eventually train at.
Sorry, I was just typing something in the chat. I don't think anybody asked this, but like how to prepare for like sub-Is. I think for me the important piece was, as I put in the chat, just having that knowledge. Some people will pimp you, and especially if you're visiting a hospital, you don't want to look bad. Some people have preconceived notations about Caribbean students, and so you want to prove them wrong. At least that was a driving factor for me. And then also, if this is somewhere you actually want to apply and you want to be, you want to shine where you can. And so I feel like knowledge as a fourth year student is the most important part. I feel like if you can tie knots and you can do certain suturing, I think that's a plus. But I think as a fourth year student, having that knowledge is the most important part. They're going to teach you in your 5 years of training how to tie knots, how to suture, things like that, but they can't teach you the foundation. So having that foundational knowledge is really important, and you're not going to get it overnight. So I found, for me personally, I found like a good surgical resource, and I would just read daily. So for example, if I was going to a lot of colorectal cases that week, then I would read the chapter about, colorectal or, breast or whatever it was that I was doing, just to kind of like prepare myself. And it's crazy how much will actually stick with you eventually. Like somebody may ask you something, you're like, oh my God, like, how did I know that? So I think that's really important. And also anatomy, of course, if you want to be a surgeon, anatomy. Like I did a thyroid case, and he just really, like, he was really focused. He didn't go in asking questions, but I just tried, I was paying attention to every point. And then all of a sudden he was like, I just cut through a muscle. What was that? I'm like, platysma. I'm like, oh my God, I never had to answer that. I never had to like even talk about that. Like, oh my God, so again, like knowing the anatomy, reviewing it before you go to a case, the night before, the morning before, and just kind of doing this stuff gradually so that whenever you do go to your sub-Is, you already know this stuff. Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece. Also, communicate. So I did it one of two ways. Once I started working with people, I found people that I was comfortable with, and I talked to them. Hey, I'm interested in doing surgery. Would you be willing to write me a letter in the future? Or well, I didn't go straight into asking them to write a letter. I would ask them if they were willing to sit down so that I can tell them more about my interests and my goals, and just kind of tell them more about who I was. And I would start off by sending them my personal statement and my CV. And then I would just meet with them and kind of tell them what my goals were. So they're keeping this stuff in mind, as we're working together. And so I think that made a difference as well. And then you never know who is going to be instrumental to your process later on. So again, talk to everybody you can, network to everybody you can. Don't just go there and be a fly on the wall. Don't talk more than you work, but it's important to talk. It's important to talk and just, put yourself out there. Those 4 weeks go by really fast, and it's another student coming right behind you, looking to do the same thing.
And then beyond sub-Is, to get your face out there and like away rotations, I would highly recommend going to conferences, whether it is ACS is a must. If you are genuinely wanting to go into general surgery, go to the clinical congress that happens in October. I met my PD that I matched at there. I just went up to her and I was like, hey, like, who are you? She was in a sweatshirt and leggings, hiking boots, and a cap. And I'm like, you look so out of place. I want to be your friend. So I literally went up to her and talked to her. So conferences, whether it is if you're in Southern Florida, I think they have like Florida has their own, like certain states have their own clinical congresses that they have. I went to the Illinois one twice. I've went to oh my gosh, the one in Denver was like equity and safety conference. Like, go to random ones. Honestly, as long as you are out there putting your face out there and you are making connections, that is what is so important, because I promise you, everybody on paper looks the same when it comes to scores, whether it comes to being this person on this club, this person did this. They want to know you as a person. So if you have someone that can vouch for you and that can be like, hey, this person's great, make calls for you. It's good to just show face and to show like who you are as a person. And that way, that also helps when it comes to like that virtual interview kind of situation too, because you realize, okay, someone's kind of like had my back. You can kind of give it your all, being like, okay, they kind of know who I am from somebody else vouching for me, that you can kind of just be a little bit more yourself. And I would say just as long as you are being yourself, you're going to be good.
Sorry, somebody asked me about resources, so I was just posting like 2 books. Is one more that I'm gonna post. I'm sorry the links are so long. But yeah, I just wanted to, and you don't need all 3, but these are just kind of some that I've been bouncing around with.
Yeah, I just saw you put the Sabinston book. I highly recommend everyone who's interested in surgery to review this book. Read it at least once before you start residency, mainly because I personally got asked about this book in particular. One of the program directors asked me, how many passes have I had on the Sabinston textbook? And good thing I was already reading it. So I was like, hey, I'm currently on this chapter. And he was pretty much impressed with that. So if you're interested in surgery, Sabinston is pretty much like the Bible.
Okay, this has all been really super helpful. We only have about 5 minutes left. I'm not sure if there's any other questions that anybody wants to ask really quick before we kind of close. There is one in here I don't think anyone answered. How many surgical rotations do you do? I think Gergie said 4. So I kind of want to jump on that. Like, how many sub-Is would you say you did?
I did 3 sub-Is and 1 colorectal surgery rotation. Just because I wanted to spend most of my 4th year doing surgery, because I like that more than all the other specialties.
Yeah, I did 1 sub-I, but I think 4 surgeries. I did plastics at Sinai, plastics at California, and in December I did the sub-I at St. Agnes, and then I did CT surgery, and then I did CT surgery again. So
Yeah, so I did one actual real sub-I. I did 3 non-sub-Is, but when you're at Sinai, they treat you like a sub-I regardless, like you are the
Yeah.
4th year. So I really liked my experience there. I think they really let you take full autonomy of the patient. So you really are hands-on, whether it's changing wound dressings, taking out tubes, putting in tubes, doing all that kind of stuff. So I really liked that experience. I think I had a lot of hands-on. Basically, I think Jimmy and I had the same experience. And then when it came to going to St. Agnes, it was like all that was taken away from you. So you were like, I don't know what to do as a student. So if you want to be very hands-on, LA Dignity with Dr. Kim, very hands-on. Sinai, very hands-on. Another thing that I was recommended, which I wish I had done, is go to Cleveland Clinic. They have a lot of hands-on, a lot of academic, a lot of good letter people. So that's also a great site to go do rotations at, but you have to apply 6 months exactly to the date that you want to apply the month for. So like 12 a.m. January 1st is for June. So make sure that you get your applications in on time because it is a first come first serve situation.
Yeah, I agree with Gurj. I did try to get into Cleveland Clinic, but my application didn't go through just because of the timing. And everyone is like vying for the same spots. So you have to be like, as soon as it opens up, make sure you put in your application.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys honestly so much. This has been truly just so helpful. I know I learned so much and I'm also now super scared as this application is opening. I feel like there's so much to do and so much to learn still, but thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining tonight. And this is recorded, so we'll be posting this too if people can join tonight. So thank y'all for coming.
Thank you for having us. You guys, if you have any questions, I'm always like kind of watching the chat, even though I don't really say much. So feel free to just post in like the surgery interest group. If y'all have other questions.
And congratulations. Y'all are gonna kill it. This is awesome to have Rossi's represent. So good luck with all your endeavors.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Congratulations.